Welcome to Choosing to Matter Cocktails with Chris, a space for open, honest, and unhurried conversations. In today's episode, we sit down with someone who's shaping our world with purpose and passion. I'm your host, Chris Lubkeman. Join me as we explore how our guest has chosen and chooses to matter. So, Sonia, it's really great that we're able to be here together. Now, I know you have a favorite drink, which you've suggested to us. Not a cocktail, not a mocktail. What is it?
Well, I was suggesting an iced tea because it was supposed to be something cold, but actually here we have a hot tea, which I also like. I mean, it's not that I never drink a cocktail or mocktail, but it's not very common. Would be on the beach in the middle of the summer and not in the winter. So, and I like tea very much.
And why do you like tea so much?
I don't know for sure. I mean, I guess it does wake me up a bit. I like the taste. One reason could be my father is from Sri Lanka. General tea is from Sri Lanka. I mean, this one is from Sri Lanka, for instance. So that could be a reason, but I like it. Mm-hmm.
So there's a sort of, maybe there's a genetic connection to the Sri Lankan tea.
Maybe. In any case, I've drank a lot of tea.
You've had a lot of tea. Is there a specific tea which you, out of all the teas in the world, is there one tea which you can say, this is the favorite Sonia tea?
No, there are several ones I like. I would say generally black tea from Sri Lanka is one. So Ceylon tea would be what I prefer.
Ceylon,
But I mean, there are different types. I also like spice tea, chai tea, all type of black tea, basically.
Okay, well, let us have a toast with our tea to begin our conversation. So here's to our day. That's actually good. So, Sonia, when you were 16 or younger, where were you?
So I was close to Lausanne. I grew up in Lutry. It's a small village on Lake Geneva. And so I was in school, a very nice high school, Gymnase de Chamblandt, which was next to the Lake Geneva. And I enjoyed it very much. We could go windsurfing from there, so it was great.
So you were a windsurfer?
Well, not very much, but we did it when we had sport.
And swimming and sailing and
canoe. We had all type of water sport.
And what did you want to do with your life when you were at that age?
So very long time, and still at that age, I was mostly interested in astrophysics. So I wanted actually to study astrophysics because I was very much into, basically understanding the universe. So you wanted to understand the universe was there something that you could remember that was a spark that really interested you, like a visit to an astronomy or a talk or something? Yeah, I think when I was 7 years old, my mother bought me a book it was on the Voyager song, and basically there were pictures of all the planets taken by Voyager, and that was beautiful pictures, and it just gave me this interest, and then I always read a lot of astronomy books, and I read about the theory. So I was really, for many years, from 7 to 16, 17, I wanted to do astrophysics.
Did you have a big telescope that you could look at the stars?
No, I actually didn't know. But I did try. I had small binoculars, so I didn't have great material, but I did try to look, Yeah,
because I remember when I was young, I said I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I thought that was really wonderful until one day I realized if I couldn't save someone's dog or cat, I'd have to tell the parent or the child that I couldn't say it, and I didn't like that idea.
Okay.
So then I quit. So did you go to school? So you graduated from high school?
Yeah.
And then what?
So I graduated from high school, and I went to study at University of Lausanne. And so by this time, basically around 17, I started to think I want maybe to do something. I did spend some time at the observatory in Geneva, and I was maybe a bit less convinced when I saw it, and because of the type of work people were actually doing there. And at the same time, it was at the time where, there wasn't the Rio conference,
Yep.
92 was just
Yep.
when I finished my high school diploma. And around this time, I started to think, okay, it's really interesting to study other planets, but maybe there is more of an emergency to study ours. So for me, it was a hobby to be interested in astrophysics. I actually also considered writing. I love to read and write. I thought maybe becoming a journalist. So I was thinking a bit of both. But then suddenly I thought, okay, it seems that there is an emergency. If we need better knowledge related to the environment, possibly climate science. And then I was not really sure what I should be studying for this. I did look at what were options, and it was not so clear. So first I started to do biology for 2 years.
Yep.
And I mean, it was general curriculum, but I mostly liked mathematics and physics and computer science. And I like some of the biology, but not all of it. I was very bad in the lab. I was breaking stuff around. So actually, I thought maybe that's not for me. At least I couldn't be a lab manager or basically do lab research because I'm very, very clumsy.
Yeah.
So then I wanted to do a third year somewhere else. I considered going abroad and actually missed the deadline.
Oh, no.
and then I realized I could still do an exchange in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then I considered different option. And actually, I had a really strong interest also in physics. So I was trying to think of something that would be at the interface between biology and physics. And then I thought of biophysics, which would be very small scale, but then also possibly environmental science or this type of larger scale. And anyway, so I was studying different options for doing this third year, and I found the curriculum in Zurich that was basically on environmental science, and it's a very general curriculum, and then you can specialize in, for instance, physics or biology, chemistry. And I thought, actually, this is what I should have been studying. Well, I mean, it was all in German. Actually, I was not good in German, so it was one reason I had not considered it before. But when I saw it, I thought, actually, that should have been what I should be studying. So then I decided to come first for a semester, and I really liked it very much. And in the end, I decided to stay here, and I changed my studies into environmental physics.
Interesting. So, in one way, one could argue you did come to a different part of the country.
Yeah.
So a different culture.
Yeah.
Right, because it was a very. You crossed the Swiss, they called the Röstigraben.
I mean, I was not totally unfamiliar with it. So my grandmother was actually from, she was born in Swiss German part of Switzerland.
Okay,
She was born in Zug. I mean, her mother was from Geneva. So, but anyway, she spoke Swiss German, for instance. So I was not totally unfamiliar, but I mean, most of my friends in the French-speaking part told me, "You're crazy. Why are you going to Zurich?"
Why go there?
But the funny thing is, after I went here, actually many others came to study the same thing as me. So some friends of my sister came to study because I said it's so great. And then so I kind of initiated a wave of people who managed then to go over the Röstigraben.
And so environmental physics. And so you finished the diploma in environmental physics. And what fascinated you about environmental physics as you kept going?
Yeah, so I was really interested about this interface between biology and physics. And
that kept on going.
Yeah, basically the role of vegetation in the climate system. And I thought this is fascinating because you need to understand both science and for instance, in the context of climate change, with increased CO2, you have change in how plants are working. And this then has an impact on the physics of the climate system. So I think that's what was motivating me for my studies. So basically I did... It's a bit of a long story. First,
that's okay. We have time.
Yeah,
so it's okay. Yes.
So as mentioned, I came here and then I decided to do environmental physics because I took a few classes in environmental physics. You could do then a specialization in atmospheric science. Actually, we were only 4 people at the time to do atmospheric science.
Really?
Yeah, within the environmental curriculum. So, but first I just listened to some of those lectures for fun, and then I realized this is what I want to study. So I was doing environmental physics, but then with specialization in atmospheric science. but I still had to do internship. And the one reason I studied biology was I had this dream. I wanted to go to the rainforest. I always saw myself in the rainforest. So I thought I need to do this because that's the reason why I studied biology. I wanted to go to the rainforest. So I did an internship in the Amazon rainforest. I was studying medicinal plants and working with Quechua communities there. So I was doing interviews with shamans in different villages, so Quechua villages.
Interesting.
And actually it was fascinating work. Wow. I almost stayed there. Actually, I thought it would be fascinating to continue this. So I was doing a herbary and basically documenting all the plants they're using for medicinal use. But the location where it was placed, so it was not quite at the bottom of it was called a cloud forest. Yes. It's a bit higher up, and there is a kind of a constant cloud. Yeah. And it's a result of this interaction between the forest and the atmosphere because it evaporates water and then creates this cloud.
It creates its own.
Yeah. So to some extent, I was also fascinated by this interaction. That's where I realized that I really want to study this type of question, how plants and the atmosphere
interact like that. So it's really the exploration, transportation, and it comes back.
Yeah.
And that, in order to study that, then this was able to tap into your math, and your modeling, your computation.
Yeah, exactly. So I found then a topic when I started doing research where I could basically use most of the skills I have because I was interested in physics and biology and also computer science always. So we do a lot of modeling and we are writing articles. So actually, because I like to write, it's sort of an advantage. So in the end, I realized I could basically join all my skills and all my interests in one area.
So you would be like the ideal member of a research team because you like to do the research, you like to write, because most scientists don't really like to write a whole lot.
No, I love to write.
Yeah, you'd be perfect. Okay, I'll remember that for future reference.
That's my job, So anyway.
That's good. Well, I want to jump from the Amazon forest up to today, and we'll come back and cover that in just a moment. So how would your grandparents describe what you do today?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I'm a professor at ETH Zurich, so it would have some meaning to them. I think they would say, okay, she's a scientist and she's studying. I think they probably would understand climate change. And I'm a professor. I'm teaching at the university. But I should say I'm the first scientist in my family. My family is not at all. None of them are scientists. Yeah. So my mother is more of a musician. She's a piano teacher. And cool. My father was rather in business. And also my grandfather, he had his own company. So it was rather from finance and business or actually music and art. So not science. Yeah.
So you became the black sheep or the green sheep or something. And
well, I think it was actually its value. Actually, an important value in my family was always do what matters to you. Do what is important to you. Doesn't matter what it is, but as long as you like it, then basically
do it well.
And actually, I remember I had a small books when I was a child, and where all people of my family could make some drawing. So, for instance, my dad did a drawing. It was with a delta plane. It was saying the sky is the limit. So it was basically the message. And my mother is really into music and she's passionate about music. So I think basically the main message was do what you're passionate about.
That's beautiful. So how would you describe to your grandparents what you do?
Well, I would say I'm doing something I'm passionate about, but also that I feel it matters and is important for society.
Yeah. And so today you're a scientist, you're a teacher, you're an author, you're one of the authors of one of the world's most important documents when it's come to climate. So tell us a little bit more about what you are doing right now that is part of your following your passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely I've been doing a lot of work in the context of the IPCC, that's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an author, I was a coordinating lead author, so I coordinated the chapter on climate extremes in the last cycle.
Yep.
And now I have a different role. I'm a part of the IPCC Bureau. So I'm a vice chair for the working group 1, that's a working group working on the physical science basis. And it's a bit of a different context because the IPCC people don't realize, but the members of IPCC are not scientists, they are the different countries of the world. So the IPCC plenary, all the members are different countries like Switzerland, but you also have China, Saudi Arabia, the US, Australia, and so on. And so the decision need to be taken by consensus. And then, for instance, which reports are going to be written, or an outline is written by the scientists or the experts, but then it needs to be approved in that plenary. So it's really at the interface between science and policy, because you're speaking with governments, you need to basically present, why this evidence is relevant. And so it's an interesting role to be in that context, understand basically our decisions are taken at this level. As an author, you see less of this because you're just writing your report, and then the reports are approved by the different countries, and there at approval, so you might get political comments, but as scientists, you are in charge. So, if you can prove where a statement comes from, then you can generally defend it. But it's an interesting point because, of course, it's this interface between science and policies. There will be attempts maybe to change some text,
manipulate things, or
for political gain. And as a scientist, for me, you need to keep your compass. So remember, I'm there to represent the science, so I need to defend the science.
Because I know you as an individual who is very adamant and very clear in your understanding of what science is telling us and saying to all of us. And so I can imagine a situation where you're listening to many of these countries who have a very different view about what is in their own best interest. So how do you mediate that?
I don't need to mediate. I'm not negotiating in the sense, basically, so the Bureau is there to stand for the science. So if a country would make a statement that is scientifically incorrect because they're trying maybe
to manipulate
the discussion, my role would be to say this argument is not valid scientifically. If they say maybe this topic is not well researched, I can say no, there is a large body of literature. You see so many papers that have been published. I state with the facts.
Interesting. So you're sort of the fact checker.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And do you like this role?
Yeah, that's my role. That's what I know. And but it has an impact. It has also policy relevance.
Yeah, hugely relevant. Yeah. So that's right now. So vegetation, climate system. Now you're in the political halls. What happened to the vegetation? Where is that in there? Help me with the arc or the connection between those two, the time in between.
You mean what I'm working on, or?
Well, so because so there's a part in the story with the Amazon understanding what's going on. Exactly. I jumped up into today, and then
I'm working on climate extremes. But my work is mostly on the land processes and atmosphere interaction. So basically, our climate is changing over continents. And we've been specifically focusing on climate extremes, for instance, droughts, heat waves, heavy precipitation. And there, vegetation plays an important role. For instance, in the amplification of drought events, because evapotranspiration, so how much water is evaporated by plants, plays an important role in the drying of the continent. So, I would say that's some of the work I do. I do work on this, for instance, for Europe, but a direct connection to the Amazon rainforest is recent work we have done where we are looking at variations in water content on land and change in CO2 growth rate in the atmosphere. And what we found was a very clear correlation between the two, which is that So you have, of course, the increase due to emissions from human emissions. But in addition to this, you have a slight increase or decrease in some years, and it can be clearly related to variations in water content on land. So it shows that when you have a drought, the CO2 increases more in the atmosphere, and when actually if you have more water on land, so the land is less dry, then actually you have a bit less increase. And we see this very strong correlation. This was actually a paper that was done by our group. We were the first one to show this. So it was based on, we use satellite data for measuring the variations in water content, and CO2 is just CO2 measurements in the atmosphere. Now, what we found was that there is an extremely large correlation, but the climate models don't get these correlations. They totally underestimate this correlation, which suggests that in reality, when you have droughts, plants basically take up less CO2 because they are under stress, or maybe some of them die. We have also more fire. But the models are not able to capture this relationship. And in a more recent paper, we have found that this correlation is becoming stronger over time, and also the models are not capturing this also. And so it suggests that water is becoming more and more limiting for vegetation, and we find the strongest correlation in the tropics. So you know that there is a large question. One possible global tipping point is basically the drying of the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah.
And there have been different studies showing that at least locally now, basically the Amazon rainforest is becoming actually a source of CO2.
A carbon source, yeah.
And so I would say our research supports the point that there is a strong impact of droughts on vegetation, and this is then reflected in the CO2 variations. And what we found additionally is the models are not able to capture this.
So I'm not a climate scientist.
Yeah.
So I appreciate very much that since the 80s and the 90s and the early work of Jim Hansen, those guys, and they were starting to do the projections, that was almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And our understanding, as you just indicated, your research, our understanding keeps increasing with the granularity, which is astonishing. How easy or hard is it to integrate your understanding into the models so that we collectively get a better understanding of the context into which we're moving?
Well, the context we are in is a context of emergency. Yeah. Because in the context of the Paris Agreement, what was set as a limit was to limit global warming well below 2 degrees and if possible to 1.5 degree. And now we had the first year where we were above 1.5 degree of global warming. I was involved in IPCC in the report, the special report on 1.5 degree global warming. I think this was really a key report. It came out in 2018. Yeah. It was actually the report that Greta Thunberg read, and it was one that was basically predating the large climate movement in 2018. And it's not surprising. And for me, it was also a moment when I thought I need to be more vocal about what we have there, because this report is so clear. We had the Moore report was about what difference does it make if we have managed to limit global warming to 1.5 versus 2 degrees, and on the other hand, what do we need to do if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degree. And the message was extremely clear. It makes a huge difference. At 1.5 degree, probably we still have things under control, more or less. But already at 2 degrees, impacts will be even much stronger. Already at 1.5 degrees, bad. We are already having people dying of climate change. Yeah. But it will be much worse at 2 degrees. In addition, some of these uncertain aspects of the climate system, the global tipping points, we don't expect them to be reached below 1.5 degree, but it could be reached between 1.5 degree and 2 degree. The other part of the report was it's still possible to limit global warming to 1.5 degree, but we need to act extremely fast. So on the question that you have, what can we do as climate scientists, I think the only thing we can say is we need to stop emitting CO2 as soon as possible. We have to decrease our emission very fast because we are putting ourselves in great danger. And as a climate scientist, what I say, my main message is I'm not going to guarantee we're going to be fine if we go above 1.5 degrees. So basically, from now on, everybody, so general society is on their own. We give the message it's dangerous. We cannot guarantee we are going to be safe. And I think that's related to some of those uncertainties that we have, that we know we are doing science, and science is not perfect. There are uncertainties remaining, and these uncertainties are not our friends.
Sure.
It's not that things are going to turn out better than they are, because we have enough evidence showing it's quite bad, but it could turn worse, because as the further we go away from the climate that we had in the past, the further we are putting us into uncertain conditions.
Into new unexplored territory from a species standpoint.
Exactly.
So, but I'm going to come back to the question, which and I appreciate your answer to that very much. And I'm quite curious how we integrate this increasing granularity of knowledge into the models, because, as you've said before, we seem to have underestimated impacts. And then my stomach kind of hurts a little bit when I hear you say that. My heart squeezes, going, well, if we've underestimated, that means in those curves or the danger, the red zone, is even sooner.
Yeah, it could be much worse, and it's not surprising. We know processes are missing that are not included in models.
Sure.
It's not surprising at all. There is, for instance, no plant mortality. Plants are not dying in climate models. In reality, they do. I mean, a forest can disappear because of a fire. It will take decades to regrow.
To grow back, yeah.
This is not in our climate models. It's, I mean, something everybody can understand. It's a massive issue.
Yeah.
So we can build it in, but the point is we don't have the time to wait for the answer. The answer is already here, that it's dangerous right now. We need to act as fast as possible.
We have to act now to do. So when you look at your activities as a human, you know, as you said, part of you is a teacher, because you also teach.
Yeah.
And students, and part a researcher, part as maybe a translator, an advocate, a person really trying to create action. What are some of the things that you are trying to get across in your work, in the public or with your students? Or you said one thing is there's an emergency. So what should we do?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are different roles, and I think that they are different, and they are all important to me. So I would say certainly in the public, it's important for me just to share the facts as they are, and just not to try to present the reality, sugarcoat reality, because there is no. It's not safe. We are putting ourselves in danger. There is no nice way to put it. And if we are not doing something about it, then it's not going to get any better. It's not because we ignore reality that reality is going to change. Reality stays as it is. Yeah. So it's my role just to, at least that's the way I interpret my roles. I say that I'm the fact checker. I'm just saying that's the way it is. I cannot change the facts. And I think I see myself maybe also in the role a bit like a doctor who would tell, a patient, you have a very dangerous illness. You have to do something about it. Maybe you have been smoking. And if you were to stop right now, you have a small chance that it's going to get under control. But every day you smoke more, every day it's getting worse. I cannot do something. I accept, my role is not to take the decision in the place of the patient. I accept that society needs to take their own decisions. There is a process there, but I just provide this information. That's my role. And I have to accept that maybe it's not going to be taken into account, but at least I will have done my responsibility. I feel my responsibility is to tell the things as they are. And I want to be able to say, I did say that it was dangerous. If it's ignored by society, well, at least I tried my best. Yeah,
I think that's a beautiful thing to think of, that at least you tried to do the best. And I like that as you're saying, I'm like a doctor. Because doctors don't always tell us the good news. As a matter of fact, you want them to tell you the bad news.
Yeah, you want them to tell the bad news. You want them to tell you things as they are, but sometimes it's not welcome, this information. Obviously, some people will try to ignore their doctors. They will try to look at another doctor, maybe what is going to give them some alternative therapies, and it might not help. Yeah. So But I understand the psychological mechanism to say, I don't want to hear this bad news.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what or who inspires you?
Yeah, I think people who have inspired me are people who have really stood their ground and stood for what is right. And also, in science, I think one person I have a lot of admiration for is Naomi Oreskes. She's a historian of climate science, and she's a professor at Harvard. And she has done some incredibly important research where she showed basically what was the mechanism of propaganda against climate science. So how basically she could show that the whole mechanism in which disinformation was created. It was there is a book she wrote with a colleague which is called Merchants of Doubt, and that it's a whole mechanism that has been put in place to sow doubt in the mind of people. And actually the playbook is well known. It was used in the past, actually, in the case of tobacco. So
for cigarettes.
For cigarettes. So for decades, basically the cigarette companies were trying to say, no, it's not dangerous to smoke, or at least we are not sure. They were trying to sow the doubt, say we cannot prove with certainty that it's dangerous. And it's the same thing has been done for climate change. And we know this for more than 20 years. So basically, people have been paid, also scientists, but which came from different fields. Chemical scientists were paid basically to say, oh, we don't know for sure, maybe it's not that bad. And actually, some of the scientists who spoke against evidence were the same who spoke against evidence in case of tobacco.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Fred Singer. So, that's crazy when you look at this. And I find it crazy that this information is not shared more widely. There was a movie that was prepared based on this book, and I don't understand why you don't speak about this in the media. It's incredible what is.
And what was the title of the movie?
Merchants of Doubt.
Merchants of Doubt. Okay. So.
Yeah, I really recommend this. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a movie to go see. I haven't seen it. I've heard of the book. I have perused it in the bookshop, but I have not read it.
Well, you can watch the movie. It's you get all the information, and it's amazing. And you feel why is it not more of a scandal?
But doesn't that frustrate you though when you read that book? Does that get you angry or get you frustrated?
It is super frustrating, of course. Yeah.
Because once you have doubt, it's 3 times, 4 times, 5 times harder.
No, yeah, but it is frustrating to be a climate scientist, obviously, because it's. You know the evidence, you know what would be rational decision making. We know we have the solutions to actually move away from fossil fuels. The main issue is fossil fuels, and the main issue with fossil fuels is, a few actors are making a lot of money out of fossil fuels. It's a very simple story, and this is, of course, having a lot of influence in society. So there are powerful interests against stopping to use fossil fuel. That's very easy actually to understand, and so it's difficult to change course. But in reality, for most people, it would be in the interest of most people of this world to actually decarbonize very fast. We have many solutions. We can move to renewables. We don't need, for instance, petrol cars. We don't need heating based on fossil fuel. There are very limited use of fossil fuels which cannot be replaced in reality. And in many cases, and that's also in the last IPCC report, the alternative would be cheaper. That's crazy. That's some of the news that's crazy. Economically, it doesn't make any sense anymore to use fossil fuels in many cases. So in case of energy, renewables are actually cheaper. So you could replace what we are doing. It will be cheaper than what we're doing right now. We are spending an incredible amount on actually polluting our planet, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and the subsidies, we don't even want to start on the subsidy system.
Exactly.
It's just kind of crazy. So it's quite interesting when we think about just our world as a planet and modeling our world, because you're looking at extreme events in different parts in Switzerland, but also that can be extrapolated to other parts of the world. And how does that really, how well can we understand this? Because again, the physics of the moment, the physics of the week, the physics of months or years how do we help understand your research world with extreme events?
Yeah. So for extreme events, I think we have different type of events that are of interest to us. For instance, heat waves, droughts, heavy precipitation. One common aspect of the research on extreme events, it involves statistics. So because we are looking at rare events. So there is also an aspect that is more mathematical in the sense that we are looking at distribution. So how often do you have hot days? So a typical definition of a hot extreme would be it's an event that happens 10% of the time, or that happens every 100 years. So that's the starting point is also a statistical definition. That's one perspective. The other one is a process definition, which is to understand what are the mechanisms that are leading to this outlier event. So I would say my perspective is more on process. I'm interested in processes leading to this, but the commonality to all those extreme events is that we define them as very rare events that happened very infrequently in the reference climate, but now, for instance, with climate change, some of them become much more frequent.
I was just going to ask that because it seems that the definition of extreme event or randomness or frequency is at a moment of complete transition.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole point is basically we are dealing with events that were very rare and we were not facing them very often. And now some of them are becoming much more frequent, and which means that we are much more frequently in conditions that we are not really ready for, or society is not really ready for. And to just take one statistic, so the hot extremes, if you take events that would have taken place in the past only once every 10 years, so relatively rare event, such events happen now already 3 times every 10 years. So that's 3 times more frequent. Wow. So it's just to show we are already in this changed climate. Climate change is not something in the future. It's something happening right now. And I mentioned before, people are already dying of climate change right now. In 2022, there was a massive heat wave in Europe. Over the continent, we had about 61,000 people who died of the heat wave. Yeah. We just don't report sufficiently about this. Yeah. So we have this number now 3 times out of 10 years. At 1.5 degree, actually this number was for 1 degree, but now we are moving to 1.5. We are not yet at 1.5 degree in the average. I did this 1 year. 1.5 degree, it's 4 times every 10 years. And then if we move to 2 degrees of global warming, so only this half a degree, it would be 6 times every 10 years. So the majority of the summers would be extreme. So you just understand also what is the difference between 1.5 and 2 is between having still the majority of the years being normal, but many outstanding.
Yeah. So in a way, we have to reset our understanding of what extreme is.
Of course, because now basically we are facing them always more frequently. And for instance, at 4 degrees of global warming, which could happen, such events would happen 9 times every 10 years. So we are starting to move into a regime where we would not have normal conditions anymore. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's also a paper we have done with one of my postdoc, Fulden Patibenitz. We saw an interesting perspective is that it's not only the heat waves that are changing, all the droughts or heavy precipitation. All those different types of extreme events are changing at the same time. So the point is, and we have had this here in Europe, one summer you might have a heat wave, but another summer you might have a heavy precipitation event. So the summer we don't have a heat wave doesn't mean necessarily it's going to be normal. Yeah. You can have heavy precipitation and flooding, as we just saw in Valencia. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at statistics to investigate how often we would still have normal months with increasing global warming. And basically at around 3 degrees of global warming, you only have about 10% of the time, 10 to 20% of the time where you still have normal conditions. 80% of the time in many locations, you have some extreme of some type.
Heavy sigh. That's sort of like, whew.
No, and that's why I'm saying it's not realistic to think we can continue our way of life and we are going to be fine. We are not going to be fine. Mm-hmm. So either change will happen because we are anticipating it and we are rational about it, or it's going to happen because we have no choice.
Yeah. That's kind of an impressive, and really impressive, not in a positive or not in a negative, just it's impressive because it means then our society as we have it today is not really prepared for this. The built environment which we depend upon, is not prepared for this.
Exactly, yeah. That's the point with the extreme events. So all the infrastructure often is built with extreme events basically in mind. So for instance, if you have a bridge or a dam, typically the way they are built by engineers is that they should withstand a 10,000-year event, for instance. The problem is if the 10,000-year event becomes a 50-year event, then your dam is going to be broken very soon, a few decades, and you have to build it again. And so all our society, all our infrastructure has been built with the climate of the 20th century in mind. It's not ready for the climate we are facing right now. And of course, even less for a climate that we would reach 2 or 3 degrees of global warming.
So we need to almost in a way redefine the climate for which we're designing.
But not only this. I mean, there are limits to adaptation. I think that's an important point. Yes, we need to adapt. We have no choice because climate has changed so much. But we also have no choice about mitigation because at some point, if we don't really, do more efforts to limit global warming, there are things we won't be able to adapt to. I don't know if you have seen the pictures in Valencia, for instance. Okay, locally, maybe things could have been better. The warning could have been better. But, I mean, they receive the water in a few hours that normally they receive in 1 year. There are limits to what you can do.
And it's also, there's limits which is rational or even irrational to try to do. Because it becomes impossible. You can't, in a way, we can't mitigate the risk down to zero.
No, exactly. So, I mean, of course, you cannot get it to zero. But, on the other hand, putting us always in more danger also is not rational, makes no sense.
So when we look at all of this and we think about where we're heading, where do you go to find peace and happiness?
Well, I have my family, so I have 2 children, I have my husband. Generally, I don't work on weekend. I relax.
Good for you.
We spend time together as a family, and I like to be maybe in the countryside, but also like just to relax, play games. It's so sometimes it just take time where I don't think about climate change.
Because it's important. Because I'm literally quite curious. I'm very curious about this because there's so much climate angst, climate fear, especially I'm sure with your students. I see it with friends of my children. They really are apprehensive. So what do you say to your children or to those young people?
I mean, my children, they know if you ask them about...
I'm sure they do. Just like mine, too.
No, I mean, with the CO2 is bad. But I told them there are solutions. Basically, they exist. It's just we need to use them. And so they know, for instance, on vacation, we're going to take the train for 2 days, maybe, because we don't want to fly there. And they know and they find this good and understand it. Or we don't have a car because because of this. So they know we made some choices because of the situation we are in. And I mean, I think as mentioned, it's very dangerous situation we are in, obviously. But the point is the solution exists. It's just a matter, actually it's not as bad even as tobacco issue. I mean, you just need to change your habits. It's a question of being ready to change a bit our habits. It wouldn't be that costly. It's not that this change is that difficult. And actually, that's for me also an important message to say. I think that when we're speaking of alarmists, there is sometimes a way to criticize climate scientists, you're alarmist. I think it's not true. The alarmists are on the other side, would try to make you believe that it would be difficult and impossible to stop using fossil fuels. They say, do you want to live, take cold showers? No. I mean, without fossil fuels, you don't need to take a cold shower. No. I mean, you can have warm water from your, from other heating systems.
Solar,
and so on. So you're not depending on fossil fuel for your hot shower. And so we can have a really nice life. We can have a very enjoyable life without using fossil fuel. It's just a matter of understanding and not being afraid of this transition.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Sonia, is to not be afraid to look at it, right? I mean, this is the thing which I liked that you said, well, part of my role is to fact check as a doctor, the climate doctor, saying, here's some of the reality, and the patient, look at it. Don't be afraid of it. Look at it honestly and think, now what? Now what can I do? Right? And as you're saying, it's just a matter of being honest and looking and saying, I will commit, because there's a big difference between commitment and intention. Because you have committed. You and your family have committed to being as climate friendly as you can be. You're not intending to do so, you're doing it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, trying my best. I'm not saying, I'm perfect either, but the most what we can. And I think that's for me also an important message. We know we need to get to net zero, obviously, if we want to stabilize the global warming. But I think sometimes the concept of net zero is difficult for some people because they are like, how can I live with zero CO2 emissions? It's going to be incredibly difficult. And I think you need also to see it's a path. We need to get to that mountaintop, and you need to go basically one step after the other. Actually, one thing I really like, it's a Chinese saying. It says a journey of 1,000 steps starts with one step. You don't need to manage to go to the mountain tomorrow. Just do the first step and then the second step, and at some point you will end up there. And just because often when you think of the overall task, you're overwhelmed. And actually it's true for any task you try to do. Often if I want to write an article, if I think of the whole article or an IPCC chapter, you are like, oh my gosh, that's overwhelming. But you just say, okay, let's start with this one subsection. Let's start with this figure. And then in the end, you have this chapter. And I think just understanding it's also a path. It's not that you need from today to tomorrow to have zero CO2 emission. But if every one of us can think about where can we improve a bit our footprint, where can we reduce? And for instance, in our pathways, which are consistent with 1.5 degree stabilization, for me, the essential point that has not been communicated sufficiently is also this pathway of a halving of emission by 2030. You have a decrease by half of the emission in 2030. So we don't need to reach net zero right now. We need to reach net zero in 2040, 2050. But on the way there, it's also important that we decrease our emissions right now because every additional emission is accumulating. But this means, I think for communication, I feel maybe this message saying, let's try to halve your emission. Maybe it's difficult to get to zero, but if you have a starting point and see where can you cut, and everyone, I think that's a personal decision. Maybe somebody is going to cut on this one flight, or another one is going to cut on the car or something else. There are different things where maybe you can reduce your emission.
Or the food you eat.
Or the food, exactly. If you eat less meat, so it's better for the climate. And I think it would be also about not being an extremist about this, saying also which sound, kind of limited action can never make a difference. And for instance, if you're speaking about food, so I'm not a vegetarian, but I do try to eat less meat because I know first it's good for the climate and actually it's better for your health. So the really important message is a healthy diet. If everybody were to eat healthy diets, this would be much better for the climate. And healthy diet would mean you don't eat too much meat, you don't eat too much red meat. But you can eat some every once in a while. And so just be reasonable. And I think this message saying just try to reduce, being more reasonable, and actually it's also good for you. And that's a lot of the news we don't hear about. There have been papers showing that a low CO2 lifestyle is actually more enjoyable. It's better for your health in general, not only in terms of food, but also because maybe instead of basically taking your car, you're going to walk, you take the tram and you walk, and it's better for your health. And we should say this. I mean, it's not actually, in German, say Verzicht. It's not a sacrifice you are doing. It's actually a benefit to you and the climate.
And I think that's actually really important to say, is a mutual, it's a dual benefit. Right? And how we can really talk about that. And that's just everyone, but it's how we as an individual make those choices. How each one of us chooses to walk a path, to take that first step. And whether it is by eating less or do whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? This is what the whole title of our podcast is, Choosing to Matter. How you choose to do this, to take that first step, is up to each one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I think that's really the crucial part. So what, one or two or three, whatever, what would you ask our listeners to think about, to challenge themselves? Is there something you would like them to learn or to do? What's the one? I think I can anticipate what you're going to say, but I want to ask you anyway.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I thought actually, the one question I often ask myself, and personally I felt it often helped me in my decision making, is I often think, am I going to look into this decision when I'm about to die? Maybe, several decades from now, when I look back, which decision do I wish I would have taken today? Because sometimes the easy decision is not a better decision. Yeah. And so it can help to take a bit of distance and think, okay, yeah, in a few decades, maybe I will look back at this moment and I would have wished I've done a different decision. And so I would say maybe this question personally I feel is something that helped me to take the decision I feel happy about.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that a lot. What would my future self look back? To be happy that I made that decision, that happy that I did this or did not do that. I think that's a really great one. Sonia, I always love talking with you. I find you an extremely inspiring person. I really, truly appreciate your commitment to helping humanity be the best version of itself, for us being the best ancestors that we can be, and reminding us that we all can do things to make a difference. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your life with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening today. It's really been a pleasure to share this story with you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon and meeting our next guest. And as always, do something today that makes a difference in somebody's life. Choose to matter.